guess I'll bother to introduce myself.
He's also known as Mr. Bakersfield.
Okay, that's kind.
Mr. Kern
Mr. Kern.
I've spent a little bit of time in real estate here, specifically in the development. If you've ever driven past Hone Ranch, you've seen some of the handiwork there. We created a few jobs, brought in a few interesting folks, and what that really caused me to do is start to understand transportation. Because when Bob Stein laid out, okay, we're going to put an industrial park here, you had to kind of look at the truck traffic up and down Interstate 5 and say, well, what's all that mean? What's, first of all, you have to get real basic, like what's in the truck, right? Who owns the truck? Where did it start this morning? Where's it going to? And is it coming back? And so you start to ask yourself those types of questions, which then leads you into this whole discussion about supply chain and logistics. So a lot of what we'll cover tonight together is about supply chain and logistics, and then how that correlates to some thinking that may be relevant to high-speed rail as we go forward. So that's kind of the overview of what we'll talk about. So infrastructure, obviously we're not getting a very good report card here or around the country. Let's back up a little bit and let's talk about more specifically California. A lot of the maps that were up early talked about I-5 and 99. You can see a little bit of 58. But let's talk about infrastructure that really drives our economy. Some people don't always think about this. What about the ports of LA Long Beach? The two busiest ports in the country. Now, there is a lot of infrastructure spending going on at LA Long Beach again. Now, we reached an all-time high in TEUs. Does everybody understand what a TEU is? It stands for 20-foot equivalent unit.
Oh.
That's a container. You see those overseas containers? Now, this gets a little tricky though, okay? That's a TEU. Everything's measured in TEUs, but 95% of what you see on the road are FEUs, 40-foot equivalent units. You rarely see one of the little short ones. If you do see it, it has stone or tile or marble in it because it's so heavy it weighed out before it cubes out, and that's why they have to put it in a TEU. So the normal container that you see traveling down the road or backed up to a warehouse is actually 2 TEUs. So I liken that to sophomore geometry. Don't question it, it just is. So they measure everything in TEUs. So the ports of LA Long Beach capped out in 2006 at 15.3 TEUs, million TEUs. Now obviously consumer spending, recession, everything else has dropped. We probably have about a 6 or 7 year gap. They project by 2014 we'll be back at that level. That is by far the busiest port in the country. In fact, if you add up all the other ports in the country, they don't match LA Long Beach.
How will the widening of the Panama Canal affect?
I'm glad you brought that up. That is the next bullet point I have down. So we're getting there. But let's talk about what LA Long Beach has done. Now, when you think about the great environmental push that has occurred down at the ports, they have been forced into really cleaning up the ports. They've been forced into efficiencies, mainly because the population around the ports recognized that they had not done anything in 25 or 35 years. They had not been good neighbors, and they finally realized they had a voice. So the ports have cleaned up their acts considerably. They now have on-dock power, meaning the ships don't come in and just idle while they unload it. They actually have to plug into onshore power. They actually have rail connections that have been significantly increased. So they have on-dock rail, they have near-dock rail, and they're moving a lot of the containers off the ships by rail. Anybody take a guess on what percent of U.S. commerce travels through LA ports? U.S. commerce.
50%?
No, 75.
No, it's not that high. 42% of all consumer goods consumed in the United States travel through LA Long Beach. But that is significant to think about. Wait a second. The products that are consumed in New York and New Jersey are coming through LA Long Beach? Yes, they are. Chicago primarily is coming through LA Long Beach. So with that, there's a considerable amount of infrastructure that's been placed on getting that product through. But why is LA Long Beach so popular?
Because of
Number one, it's
Asia.
a deep water port.
Asia.
Asia, so there's proximity to Asia. And what do those big steamship lines want to go? From point A to point B. What's happened to steamship lines over the last 20 years? Foreign egos have got the better of them. They keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Right? When I first started studying logistics, a big ship with 6,000 TEUs, there were 3 of them on the ocean. That was a big deal. Today they're coming out with 12,000 TEU ships going to 14. Now the last ships that could get through the old Panama Canal had to be under 6,000 TEUs. The new ships can go through that. So a lot of people think about LA Long Beach is spending all this money to increase efficiency, increase the throughput, and at the same time, the other reason LA Long Beach is so popular is because there's 17 million consumers right there. No other port has that type of population base other than Port Elizabeth. Norfolk doesn't have that, Houston doesn't have it, Jacksonville doesn't have it. And so when you talk about your cost per good mile, LA Long Beach is very efficient because of the rail connections out of LA Long Beach and also the consuming population that we have right there. And for some reason, Southern Californians just consume a lot more than anybody else in the rest of the country. It's just the way it is. So LA Long Beach has made some great moves. That's going to have a big impact on us because the big ships are going to continue to come to LA Long Beach. You're going to continue to have upgrades and infrastructure to get the containers efficiently off of the ships. Nobody else on the West Coast can really compete with the volume and the throughput. Nobody else on the West Coast can really even land the bigger ships. So it's going to continue to be a major source. That is going to drive our economy here. 2 recent job creation announcements. Caterpillar, 200 jobs. Dollar General, 400 jobs. Guess what's going to be at every one of their doors on the inbound side? An ocean freight container. IKEA, the 5th largest shipping entity in the United States, doing discount furniture, bringing 30,000 containers a year into this country. 78% of them come into LA Long Beach. So that trend is going to continue. That trend is going to spill over into our basin and help us create jobs. And then critics will raise it, well, wait a second, what about all the truck? What about all the diesel? There is a give and a take. At the same time, you can also design it so there's more efficient use of existing infrastructure. Meaning, how many of those containers right now are blowing right through us with no job or anything here associated with it to help keep it clean? Can we help design our own driver pools here with clean trucks, leave our community, go down, pick up the containers, come back, and then that person's part of our community? So there are certain ways that we can temper some of that traffic. But the reality is we can't put up blockades on I-5. They're going to come. And if Kern County says you're not coming here, guess what? They'll go to Fresno. And then we don't have anything. So part of it is just being sensible about it. Let's talk more about Panama Canal. They're expanding it. They're adding a whole other set of locks just north of it. This will allow the biggest ships that are made today to cross over. Some people say then, well, that means the end of LA Long Beach. Hardly. A couple of factors contribute to that. Number one is steamship lines want to go from point A to point B, and they want to do it as quickly and efficiently. Think about how expensive that boat is. The longer it's on the ocean with the same load,